Alrighty, there we go.
All right, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the world you are in. Welcome to the last round, round 23 of the SRL F1 season on the PlayStation platform. F1 2023, round 23, Interlagos, sending the season off in a proper way. I'm Kamikaze Fox. I got the Cat Chiropractor with me in the booth, getting ready to do an 18-minute short qualifying session, followed by a 50% race where we'll do 36 laps around the Interlagos circuit for Brazil. What is going on?
Yeah, what a way to end the season. It's one of my favorite tracks, maybe my favorite track. I know I said that last week about Suzuka, but Interlagos, just a very nice flowing track. It just feels like you can really send it in some of those corners, that high-speed corner, I think turn 6, I want to say it is, into 7, and then the very mechanically grip-heavy, tire-heavy section 2. So I'm looking forward to Interlagos, always a favorite of mine to watch, and maybe some more rain to really throw a kink into some plans and setups these drivers have.
Yeah, definitely one of the fan favorites. I know it's definitely one of the drivers' favorites, and I think that's an ode to it's a proper F1 circuit. It's a throwback, much like Suzuka was last time out. It's an old school track. Not a lot of it has changed over the years. Same thing you could say with Silverstone, Monza. Some of these original tracks, as I call them, that haven't changed a lot over the years. There's not a lot of runoff, and as you said, it's a very rhythmic track. You have the section one, you got the quick left, right, and then you got the straightaway, and then you run down the hill. You get the sweeping up to the right-hander, and then you've got that very tight, mechanically grip-heavy section two where you can gain a lot of time or lose a lot of time, and then it's back on the throttle for sector three and back out on the straight. It's very quick lap times, depending on how good or bad you are, 106 to 109. So, but yeah, last round of SRL Season 9, obviously Jensen Randall locked up the championship quite a few rounds ago, but nonetheless, been an interesting season overall. We saw the championship battle through most of the season between him and Logan. Logan opted out for a little while, and then you had the battle for second place between Oleski and Nicolo Falzarezzi. We've seen some new drivers come, some different winners throughout the course of the season. So it'll be a proper send-off, as you said. End the season at Interlagos is a good way to send the season. And again, we'll have Season 10 kicking off in September when F1 2024 kicks off on the PlayStation platform as well.
Yeah, we'll have the Indy 500 coming up on June 1st here on the SRL YouTube channel. Of course, as you mentioned, Season 10 in September. But just because this season of F1 racing is coming to a close does not mean that there's nothing on the horizon for SRL through the summer. I mean, summer for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere anyway. I know we've at least got some Australian drivers, so summer for us. But yeah, Indy 500 in a couple weeks for SRL. So still more to come, even as this season of F1 racing comes to a close.
Yeah, and if you've never watched an SRL Indy 500, it's actually really interesting. Not all of the F1 drivers partake. It's run on Project Cars 2, which was a PlayStation 4 game, and Sandra's got a few interesting rules set up to make it as competitive as possible, and they do run 100 laps, and lots of different drivers usually join. Some of the guys that used to do the GT3 championship will be there. Not all of the F1 drivers. And the interesting thing for me is you take a driver like Dion Stahl, who is a little subpar when it comes to F1, but man, he can drive an Indy car around Indianapolis like there's nobody's business. So it's definitely interesting to see the drivers that are able to run that Indy 500 versus what they do in the Indy car, because there seems to be a little bit of a difference when it comes to that. Obviously, cars are different, but for whatever reason, Dion Stahl, the Indy 500 setup just works better for him than it does for Formula One car. And then you've got guys like Jenson Randall, quick in just about anything he drives. So, and I'm sure there's a little bit more on the horizon. Sanders, I know, been kicking around a couple of ideas to do a couple other things over the summer. So maybe we'll see the return of the Snowball Derby. Haven't done that in a couple of years. Might see a 24-hour race for Daytona or Le Mans, but still kicking some ideas around, seeing what he comes up with for the summer, just to try and keep people engaged. Boo. So stay tuned. Check us out on Instagram to keep up with all the news and notes for that stuff coming up as we get ready to kick off this 18-minute short qualifying session. We can run down the driver lineup. We've got Sandro Dulius in the Ferrari, followed by Jenson Randall and Oleski in the Aston Martins. David Rod, that's Monster Dave, right?
That's David Rod, yeah.
In the Red Bull. Bor Bune in the Haas, Robin Hertestegen in the McLaren, Jesper Lempinen in the AlphaTauri, Ivan Brito rocking the Mercedes, Noel and Nicolo Falzarezzi in the Alfa Romeos, Nick Van Gelder along with Max Mulder, Red Bull and Alpine, Dion Stoll in the Ferrari, George Wolf in the other Haas, and Wakanda 23 FC. That's Frey Abile in the McLaren. So it looks like we've got 15 drivers for today's Grand Prix. Not a bad way to end the season.
Nice to see Freyab back. It's been a few rounds since Freyab's been in a race with SRL. I was hoping to see him last week at Suzuka, especially after another McLaren driver got his maiden win. I'm a big fan of Freya Bly. I think especially the battles he had with Logan earlier in this season, it seemed like those two were always engaged with each other some way. But if there's a dark horse in this race, I think Freyab is one of the drivers capable of taking down Jenson Randall on his current streak of wins, even from the back.
And Freyab had a very good driver. One of the most impressive debuts. He came in a couple years ago to SRL. He wasn't running a full season. He came in the latter part of season 6 or 7, I believe, and finished off that season and then was real competitive the season after that. So good to see him back in the saddle. Looks like we've got sunshine for qualifying, at least, as I try to get my track map up here.
Yeah,
And it looks like Senna Haywire has
yeah.
joined the session.
And I see coming out of the paddock, that is an Alpine, so must be the Alpine of Max Mulder, going to be first on the track.
That is Max. He will be the first one out. Max Mulder filling in for the last couple races of the season. I believe was he suspended or did he decide to leave in the middle of the season? I
I
can't
think
remember.
he just, one of the many drivers who retired, and then they're like pro wrestlers. They have to retire a few times before it sticks.
Never fully over.
But the 1v1 championship winner back in January at the start of the new year at Silverstone, Max Mulder. Knockout bracket a little loose here coming out of Sector 2 already, and that's going to be a problem. You really need to use the curbs, especially in Sector 2. You'll be braking on the curbs sometimes, and obviously that's going to result in some spin and some traction loss if you do that a little too much.
This is Definitely a hard track to find the right setup for because there is such a reliance on the mechanical grip in that sector too. And so much time can be gained or lost through there as we hop on board with Max as he's going to start this first flying lap. Down through the S's. Now he's using a whole lot of curb on that left-hander out onto the straightaway.
And then coming here, you can really unsettle the car on that outside curve on the exit of turn 4 there, but Max keeping it together this time, and then this very fast uphill sweeping right-hander. And yeah, I was about to say, you'll unsettle the car again going to the outside
Big
preparing for that
twitch,
turn.
and that completely invalidated his lap time. That was... But we can pick up Jesper Lempinen. He's in the same part of the track. And now very tiptoe through this sector 2.
Yeah, this is a flat-out left-hander here, and then this is a very tricky turn. You need to avoid the curb here after being on the curb the whole time. Jesper doing that nicely, and then here it's technically a curve, but it's an easy straight line to the finish line here.
And Bor Bune, 109.238. Jesper Lempinen, 109.1 to the top of the charts, followed by Nicolo Falzaresi, 108.305. Let's see, we've got Dion Stahl currently in Sector 2.
Looks like he's on some inters, so the typical outlap for a setup check for Dion Stahl here.
I will never understand that. Ivan Brito is on an invalidated lap time. We've got Noel. He's coming around Sector 3 here, come to the front stretch. And he's a 109.2, so he's good enough for third.
Oh, and then a little spin out.
Spun going into turn 1.
Yeah, the Senna S I think is going to be the site of a lot of action here. You want to get outside coming in. You can brake kind of late, like at the 50-meter board, but it is downhill. There's a lot of curb you're going to take on, so easy to lose the back end. It's such a front-end heavy track already.
We've got Robin Herderstagen coming out of that last corner onto the dog leg straightaway here. Going to get a little bit of a tow of one of the cars off of in front of him. Might be a little bit too far back, and he's going to come across the line 110.755. And Jensen Randall is out on track. Was he going to set a lap time today?
I was just going to say, I imagine Jensen's just kind of warming up, testing the setup. I mean, a purple sector 1 for him, of course. I don't imagine Jensen's going to set a time here. And he also losing
the same thing Max Balder did.
Yeah, that is.
He didn't invalidate the lap time, but big moment there.
There's something about the. I mean, it's again a fast uphill right slow. Not slow right-hander, but long right-hander. Turn 6 and 7. But it's a little atypical for me to see people lose it going to the outside to prep for the turn into 8.
See if he dives into the pits or he stays in it. Nope, to the pits. Excuse me. Meanwhile, Oleski has set a lap time of 1:12, but he's doing the old intermediate thingamajig. I don't get it.
Well, I'm on board with David Rod here, who's coming around the last curve onto that start-finish straight. This is a man who has raced 4 times in SRL, 3 podiums, all second place behind Jensen Randall. And I have, if Freyov has a chance of taking a win here, I think this has also to be on your radar. That's David Rod, the Romanian driver in the Red Bull.
And Sandro Julius just went 108.441, third quickest. And we'll go pick up David Rod. Currently no time set by him, but purple sector 1.
We'll see if he can keep it together coming out of turns 6 and 7 here. And that's the curve I was talking about, right where you saw him brake, preparing for 8. It's so easy to lose the back end. You're braking on a curve while turning. But David, the first one we've kind of been on board with, who had no incident coming through there.
Well, and another thing I noticed with him as he was going up that the uphill right-hander is Max and Jensen were both redlining 5th gear coming up that hill, where he was in 6th. So being that extra gear up lowers the RPMs a little bit, maybe a little bit less wheel spin, and he comes across the line at a 108.528. That's good enough for 4th right now.
As expected with Interlagos, it's going to be a tight qualifying. I think only 2/10 between Nicolo Falzaresi in P1 and David Roth's time of 108.5.
Meanwhile, Bor Bune is coming around front straightaway. He is all the way down to the wall. He's going to come across the line at a 108.626, bumps himself up from 9th to 5th. Meanwhile, we've got a few drivers that have yet to set a time. We've got Senna Haywire. He's coming across the line now. He is a 110.112, good enough for 10th. Ivan Burrito out on track. He's yet to set a time as well, but it looks like he just went off track at that.
Okay, maybe it's not the Senna S's that we have to be on the watch out for. It is that uphill right-hander that it's catching people off guard here so far in qualifying.
It didn't invalidate his lap time, but it certainly hurt his time. And now Senna Haywire has retired from the session. Not sure what's up with that. Still got 9:27 to play in the session. He had enough time to set another time if he wanted to, but here comes Ivan Burrito across the line, 109.547, and he is good enough for 10th, so he'll bump Senna Haywire from the 10th spot. Meanwhile, that just leaves Max Mulder as the only one. Well, Dion Stahl set a time, but that's not really a real time. But Max Mulder, the only one to have set a time so far. And he's coming out of the last corner and up the dogleg straightaway.
Farabala is looking at a big improvement as he comes across start-finish. This might catapult him into P2, P3 range.
Ooh, P6. Lost a little bit of time somewhere. 10. Well, now it's P7 as Nicolo Falzaresi just went quickest. 108.249. Free Abile was the provisional pole sitter.
Lots of track evolution now. Everyone who's got a legitimate time, everyone seems to be improving through each sector, so things are only going to continue to improve here as David Rod a couple tenths up coming into the last sector himself.
And he's coming down the front straightaway, see if he can improve his position. Currently 5th at a 108.528 and 108.360. So he improves his position by 1. That drops Andrew Julius down into 5th. We pick him up down the straightaway.
Koivuniemi into P2. His first real hot lap. Koivuniemi 108.309. So really tight there, P2, P3, P4. Only 300ths between them.
Sandro heading through Sector 2 right now. And he's 3/10 up on his last time, so...
Yeah, purple sector 2 for Sandro.
And then 3/10, that would put him at 108.1 realistically, if I'm doing the math correct.
Wow.
And a 108 flat to the top of the charts, so my math was good, and he was still gaining time. Good for Sandro, provisional pole sitter at a 108 flat. That drops Nicolo Falzaresi into second, Oleski into third.
So Sandro, one of the drivers who can still kind of make some waves, make some changes in the driver's standings. Right now he has P4, 13 points behind Koivuniemi. So Sandro can still battle his way into P3 behind Jensen Randall and Falzaresi for the season standings. Those two have locked up their positions, but P3 still to play for here between Sandro Dulis and the Finnish Koivuniemi.
It doesn't look like anybody's currently on a hot lap, unfortunately.
One thing I
So
noticed with
got
David
a lot of
Rod,
guys in pit and
yeah,
go ahead.
I think we're going to see a lot of clustering towards that last real turn, turn 12. But one thing I noticed with David Rod, as now he's into P6, it's so close between him and the drivers in front. You know, you can really cut quite a bit of the pit lane entry on this track without any sort of invalidation. You see a lot of drivers doing that as David Rod comes around. David Rod kind of goes a little wide around that pit lane marker, and I think it might have cost him, you know, maybe those 300s. This time he'll go into the pit lane. But that's something that I did notice, and then, you know, now that he's 108.36 and right in front of him, Freya 108.32, is David Rod maybe leaving a little bit of time on the table that's costing him maybe even a full row for the starting grid.
So a couple of drivers that we saw, well, a couple of drivers that set times that we didn't catch. Nick Van Gelder, 108.790, good enough for 10th so far. Robin Herderstegen, 110.755, and that's 15th. So as you said, you know, the times here, I mean, first to, gosh, look at that. First to 10th is all 108, separated by 7/10 of a second. So a lot of drivers jumped in here for the pits. Going to cycle out for the first set of tires. Make a last-ditch effort. We got 4 minutes left to play in this qualifying session before we kick off this final race of the season. Currently honed in on Nicolo Falzaresi. Looks like he might be one of the first ones to come around to start a hot lap here with 4 minutes left to play. Falzaresi currently third quickest with a 108.249. Here we go down into turn one. As you said, the Senna S is pretty tricky. This whole track is pretty tricky.
Yeah, and you saw Nico go down into third coming into Senna S's. That's a bit more aggressive than we've seen other drivers who keep it in fourth, some even keeping it in fifth. It is an S that's downhill, so it's always going to be tricky.
And then here, this has been the problem child here. The top of this hill. And Falzaresi hits it perfect, but I'm kind of with you. I'm a little surprised to see some guys really been losing it there. We saw Jensen had an issue there. Max Mulder had a big moment there. Ivan Brito, I think, at one point had a moment there.
Well, and you had mentioned David Rod kept it in sixth through that sweeping right-hander. So did Nico. So I think Nico maybe a little aggressive on the Senna S, but taking it nice and safe on that right-hander.
He was 3/10 up at the end of sector 2. That would crack him into the 107s. Here he comes across the line. So close, 108.046. And look at that, a 108 flat for Falzaresi, a 108 flat for Sandro, who's now on his outlap. 20 thousandths of a second separation. Looks like Oleski has invalidated his lap time, so he's going to be no good.
I'm a little surprised Nico didn't keep it close to the inside wall there coming across start finish. We've seen so many other drivers just really hug that left wall. I mean, he got pole. You can't argue with that, but I almost wonder if he could have broken into the 107s if he had really
and here we go. We're starting to see the stack up here. We've got Sandro's off pace. He's letting one of the cars go by. Still got a number of drivers in the pits getting ready to come out. But Sandro now holding up one of the Red Bulls.
Well, he's getting an early start then. It's about 17 seconds coming out of this turn that Sandro's at. That's turn 12. So you need about 15, 16, 17 seconds from here to get across start finish. There's obviously plenty of time, 90 seconds left. But if anyone wants to really queue up near the end of the session, they might find themselves in trouble.
I don't know if he was trying to let that Red Bull go by and see if he could get a toe off of him. I think that might be David Rod that might have been behind him. Actually, it might be Nick
I
Van
think that's Nick
Gelder.
Van Gelder.
So Nick, he's going to use Sandro for a little bit of a tow.
I mean, that's all fine right here on this straight, but as we get into sector 2 and he's got some dirty air, he's gonna start feeling the effects of that more than any toe is gonna benefit him.
Let's see what Sandro does at the top of this hill. He keeps it in sixth, nice and tight.
And now this is where Nick's gonna start to feel dirty air if he's gonna be close to Sandro. This is a flat-out left-hander, but I think Sandro's gapped Nick enough. As another purple sector too. That's the second time Sandro's had the
Sandro
fastest.
was up by almost a tenth. It was 83 hundredths of a second. So seeing who's going to crack into the 107s. It's a
Oh man.
108.021, and he takes provisional pole position back. Unbelievable run. And right now, that's going to be provisional pole. Falzaresi's in the pits. Time is up, so hot laps will count.
So George Wilkes kind of quietly snuck into P3. He's a 10th up on this current lap, so he's not going to be improving. This might actually be his cooldown lap, but well done by George Wilkes. While we were watching Sandro, he gets in there beating Koivuniemi by a 10th for P3.
Woo! 108.126 will pick up Oleski. He's currently coming to the top of that right-hander. So he's hitting into the Sector 2 part. Borbune jumps to fourth quickest with a 108.204. Friabile locks in at a 108.320. Good enough for sixth so far. Jesper Lempinen is a 108.609. Oh, and there's traffic for Oleski, and he's got to split them.
Oh.
Threads the needle. I don't know if that slowed him down at all. He's up almost 2/10 at the end of Sector 2.
He's definitely going to lose time. I don't think that was a true indication of any time lost there, but yeah, you hate to see that.
Here comes Oleski. Good enough for fourth, 108.172. We'll pick up Nick Van Gelder. He's just dived into the pits. He's going to call it a day. And Dion Stahl is currently locked in at a 109.527. Look at those times. Everybody, the top 11, are all separated by 0.7 of a second.
Yeah, I knew the qualifying would be tight. This may be some of the tightest qualifying we've had all season, so everyone looking good, more comfortable as the qualifying session went on. The turns 6 and 7 seemed to calm down as maybe the track got rubbered in and people got a little more settled with the circuit here at Interlagos, literally between the lakes. But it should be a good race. We'll see if there's rain as we get in to the race proper.
So all time set on the soft tires. Sandro Dulius, final pole position of the season, followed by Falzaresi, George Wilkes, Oleski, Borbune, Friabile, David Rod, Jesper Lempinen, Max Mulder, Nick Van Gelder, Noel, Ivan Brito, Dion Stahl, Senna Haywire, Robin Herterstegen, and then Jensen Randall, the only to not set a time. He's starting from the rear of the field, trying to do the last to first challenge, which he's accomplished a number of times. Be interesting to see where Jensen's time would have sat with the rest of these guys. If anybody would have cracked into the 107s, it definitely would have been Jensen.
Yeah, with no offense to Sandro Dulis, Nicolo Falzaresi, George Wilkes, Jensen's just kind of shown that he's got the pace. Even if he doesn't have the one lap pace, he seems to have race pace. One of the best at managing over time his race. So I was kind of thinking 108 flat was going to be where we would see a lot of the drivers, with 107 definitely a possibility, but nice and close here at Interlagos. A little overcast right now.
There's some clouds in the sky. Weather could be a little bit of foreshadowing there. Weather could be a factor come the later stages of this race.
As it stands currently, Sandro Dulis into P1, Koivuniemi in P4. That would leapfrog Sandro Dulis into P3 on the driver standings for this season over Koivuniemi. Both drivers just models of consistency. Uh, Not a ton of podiums between the two of them, but they both have had over 20 races and just frequently P4, P5, able to complete most of their races without any incidents.
Well, I think a lot of these guys, as we get ready to do the formation lap here, it's the last race of the season. I don't think points is really what anybody's thinking about at this time. I think it's a matter of, can I get a win? Can I get a podium? Can I go out and end the season with a bang? And Sandro definitely trying to do that, starting on pole position. Falzaresi, very fast, very aggressive driver. Same with George Wilkes. And Oleski starting in fourth. He's a little bit more methodical, kind of like Sandro is. So if they can stay out of trouble with the other drivers around them, definitely get some points on the board. Broer Bune, been very quick throughout the course of the season. Friabile, number of pole positions and podium positions. And as you said, David Rod, I think you're right with the dark horse. What is it? 3 out of 4 races that he's been in, he's finished on the podium. So
yeah, real bridesmaid type thing for David Rod here. Always second place in his podium finishes, which I imagine it's always behind Jenson Randall. So not his strongest qualifying, P7. That's maybe about as far back as we've seen David Rod start now in his 5th race with SRL.
We've got Jesper Lempinen, Max Mulder, 8th and 9th. Nick Van Gelder, who is the Season 4 champion way back in the way back, actually won that championship here at this race when the two Force Indias at the time collided at the Senna S's, taking each other out and opening the door for Van Gelder. So it was a very exciting way to send that season off. Ivan Brito in 12th, Deion Stahl 13th, Senna Haywire will be 14th, Robin Herderstegen starting in 15th position, and then Jenson Randall, as we said, doing the last to first challenge as he locked up the Season 9 championship, his 3rd championship with SRL back at Singapore quite a few races ago. So, kind of interesting. I see some people starting on hards. I see some starting on mediums. Weather may or may not be a factor.
Yeah, they're both Ferraris on softs, so I know those two teammates, Hunter Delice and Deion Stahl, they are teammates who work together very well, but they seem to know something no one else does. The lights are on here, Interlagos.
Lights out, time to run what you brung their way in a puff of smoke, and it's a good start for Sandro Julius as they head down into turn 1. And look at Oleski trying to thread the needle as he did in qualifying, but he's not going to be able to get through. Falzaresi holds on the second. They're fanning out behind him. Whoa, we've got a car off, and that's Falzaresi.
Oh, no, Nico.
Into the grass, and that is going to cost him big. Meanwhile, there goes Jenson Randall around him and up into 12th. So, unfortunately, it seems like wherever Falzaresi is, he's always finding himself around Jenson Randall. Meanwhile, Sandro Dulius is already up to a 2nd gap over George Wilkes.
Yeah, I think between Wilkes and Koivuniemi there was not contact, but definitely some jostling through the Senna S's, and Sandro, especially on soft tires, taking big advantage of that.
And Max Mulder and Jesper Lempinen side by side. Max Mulder is going to get that position for 6th. George Wilkes, though, cutting that 9/10 of a second gap down to 7/10. Meanwhile, Friabile is all over the back of Oleski. And I'm looking at the tire strategies. None of those tire strategies say start on softs. So,
there must
strategy by the Ferraris.
Yeah, it might. Maybe it's a thing that I kind of hope someone gambles on every week. Is there will be a safety car maybe in the first 8 laps or so. Maybe the overcast skies make the Ferraris believe that there's an opportunity here to get positions early.
Oh, and Broer Bune and Friabile going toe to toe down the back straightaway there.
Yeah, it's always a Haas and Friabile, isn't it? It used to be Logan Horn, now it's Broer Bune.
And it looks like David Rod is getting around his teammate Nick Van Gelder for the 8th position as they battle side by side. I think Nick's going to have to, nope, Nick's going to hang on to it and take that position. Oh, but here comes David Rod back to the inside. And the inside is going to become the outside, so Nick's going to get that position back. And these guys going side by side like this is going to allowing Jensen Randall, who's moved his way up into 10th, to gain ground on these two.
Nicolo Falzaresi also recovering back into P12. He never pitted despite going way off track, so I'm guessing no, at least repairable damage for Nicolo Falzaresi. No need for a pit stop.
And the top three cars all set the fastest lap as they come across the line. It was Sandro, George Wilkes, and Oleski. And now we're going to have DRS. So the top three, well, the Sandro, but the top looks like what? Second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. Almost everybody's going to have DRS coming down that straightaway. So we see Jensen Randall's making a move on Jesper Lempinen, pushes him wide at the end of the straightaway. That's going to move him up into the 8th position. Nick Van Gelder drops down a couple of spots into 10th. David Rod moves up into 7th. I mean, there's action everywhere right now.
Yeah, especially with Nico and Jensen, you know they're going to make their way back up into the higher positions, and it's not easy to overtake, especially in Sector 2, where the drivers are all bunched up now.
And that gap, Sandro Julius has lost about a half a second now to George Wilkes as they come down this front straightaway.
Yeah, slipstream and DRS in effect for George Wilkes. Sandro's going to be praying for rain, I think, on these softs. This track is so hard on the tires.
And George Wilkes setting himself up. He's going to be in a prime position to take the top spot away from Sandro down this straightaway. And a 3-second time penalty for Senna Haywire. George Wilkes doesn't make a move. Meanwhile, Jensen Randall finding a way around Max Mulder for the 7th position.
Keeping it together. Sandro, I was wondering, he's feeling the pressure of George Wilkes behind him, but keeps it nice and clean into turn 8.
Yeah, riding on board with Wilkes, he's actually being relatively smooth riding on board. And Sandro's feeling the pressure from Wilkes. He's also got it's a double-edged sword because he's on those softs, and about 4 or 5 more laps of good grip, and then they're going to start to fall off.
We'll see if George Wilkes wants the overtake now. I think he'll get it with DRS, and Sandro, as you mentioned, is not going to want to battle this too much.
And he'll tuck in behind George Wilkes. So George Wilkes to the top spot. Meanwhile, Jesper Lempinen and Max Mulder battling it out for the 8th position. Jensen Randall setting his sight on David Rod for 6th. Still watching the battle up front. Sandro's going to duck out. He's got the DRS. He's going to take the top spot back from George Wilkes heading down to the end of the straightaway. So Sandro back to the top spot. Meanwhile, Jensen Randall is getting around David Rod for the 6th position. Nicolo Falzaresi's found his way back into the points. Moves up into 8th over Jesper Lempinen. And Nick Van Gelder still sitting in the 10th spot. Meanwhile, we're going to go check in on that battle between Jensen Randall and David Rod. Is David Rod trying to get that position back as they head into Sector 2. And it looks like Jensen's going to be able to take that spot away and hang on to it. Meanwhile, back towards the front, George Wilkes coming out onto the front straightaway in hot pursuit of Sandro Julius. And he's going to have the DRS and the slipstream available, so George Wilkes should take this position back from Sandro. And he's going to be bringing Oleski along with him, the Aston Martin in 3rd. And there's the move down the straightaway. Oh, and Oleski almost... Oh, man. Almost gave the chrome horn to Sandro hard on the brakes.
Yeah, I held my breath there watching George Wilkes get the overtake done, coming on a very narrow line into the Senna S. That kind of compromised both Sandro and Alexi's lines too, but all 3 drivers keeping it respectful and clean here.
And meanwhile, Sandro takes that position back. So we've got Sandro back out in front. George Wilkes in hot pursuit. Oleski's caught this battle. He's brought Friab Bile, and Borbune is now joining the party. A 5-car battle for the lead of this race. Meanwhile, David Rod has found his way back around Jensen Randall. So Jensen Randall drops back to 7th. Jesper Lempinen up into 8th. Falzaresi drops to 9th. Nick Van Gelder somehow, some way, still in 10th.
Boy, George Wilkes wants to get by Sandro so badly. You see him slowing up. He's got the pace into the corners. but he knows, George Wilkes knows he can't get that overtake done in Sector 2 safely. So they'll leapfrog
And
again here, and they might just keep switching on the 2 DRS straights.
well, Sandro's going to be a sitting duck, and they're going to split Sandro. Oleski to the inside, George Wilkes to the outside, and Oleski's going to try and get the 2-for-1 deal. Down to the inside. Inside's going to become the outside. George Wilkes is going to be able to hold him off, but George Wilkes picks up a 3-second timing penalty, cutting that corner at the center S's. Meanwhile, here comes Sandro Julius once again. He's going to have the DRS. He's going to dive to the... Nope. Freab is going to try and get in there. Ooh, that was close.
Yeah, you mentioned it's getting bunched up here for P1, and Freya Belay just took me by surprise that McLaren suddenly looking like he was going to duck into maybe P2, a double overtake there, coming out of the straight.
And you see the lights flashing on these cars, the energy recovery system in full effect as these guys are going to have DRS, the slipstream, and the ERS all heading out onto that front straightaway. And we've got a caution flag flying in Sector 2. That might be from Max Mulder and Dion Stahl. Looks like maybe a quick on-off. And now it looks like George Wilkes is able to separate himself a little bit through Sector 2 over Oleski, but Oleski's still going to have that DRS advantage.
Yeah, George Wilkes as much as 7/10. It's a lot of ERS.
Bune and Friabile are making some evasive maneuvers around one another as Borbune takes the 4th position. George Wilkes loses out to Oleski. And look at Sandro. Here comes Sandro with a push. Oh, and there's contact between the Borbune. Oh, and they're side by side, 2 for 2.
Yeah, they're
2
looking.
by 2.
It's like a formation lap with these 4 in front of Freyab alive. Freyab's going to attempt to pounce on all this battling in front of him.
Oh, and a crossover move by Sandro. Somebody's in the grass.
That was George Wilkes. I think a little bit of a bump from Freyab on that uphill right-hander.
And Jensen Randall is becoming a part of this battle. He is up into 6. Oh, and Wilkes has lost it.
Oh, dirty tires for George Wilkes after going off.
Oh, and he's lost it heading into Sector 2. And yeah, that's the...
Oh, and Freya Blight and the Haas again coming out of turn 12.
Oh, man, a lot going on. Friabile, Borbune. Meanwhile, this has all helped Jensen Randall go from 6th to 3rd.
And Nico back into P5, so...
Check this out. David Rod, though. David Rod is up into 3rd as he just got around Jensen Randall. So these two have not been able to separate from one another. Meanwhile, Sandro is all over the back of Oleski again for the top spot, heading into the left-hander at the end of the straightaway. Sandro's going to take that spot back.
I imagine Sandro's tires are coming toward the end of their peak performance, so Koivuniemi might have the benefit from here. But Jensen Randall, as he always does, starting from the back on the hard compound, he's only going to get stronger.
And Friabile is in the pits. I imagine he might be getting a new front wing. I didn't get to see the contact, but man, that was a crazy lap. And I mean, you could see it was bound to happen. 5 cars battling for the top spot. The tension was building. Something was bound to happen. Started with George Wilkes getting a little pushed off at the turn 6-7 complex. And then here comes... Oop, I thought Sandro was going to dive into the pits, but he's staying out.
Looks like Alexi going to get the overtake.
Yes, just barely at the end of the straightaway.
But a very wide entry into the first Senna S.
Oh, and a big wiggle by Sandro, and you're right, his tires are starting to give up. And here comes Sandro. Here comes Jensen Randall. So it's going to be an Aston Martin 1-2 once again.
Well, it's taken Jensen a little bit longer to threaten for the lead. 10 laps this time. That's almost a third of the race.
Meanwhile, Falzarezzi is battling it out with Jesper Lempinen and Nick Van Gelder. And Van Gelder has finally managed to make his way up into at least 7th position. And Borbune behind him. So we've got a 4-car battle building for the 6th spot. But Nick Van Gelder picks up a 3-second timing penalty.
Well, I would say Nicolo Falzarezzi in P5 after going off track in the opening seconds kind of shows you this is a relatively short track. It's a quick lap time, so there is no there's no disruption to your race that puts you fully out of
And
contention.
Jensen Randall going around his teammate for the top spot. So last to first in a matter of 11 laps. But Sandro hasn't given up on this fight. He's still running in third. He's brought David Rod with him. And I imagine after 11 laps, them softs have got to be screaming.
Yeah, we do not have information on the weather. Of course, the drivers can ask the race engineer for their predictions, but it's been overcast the entire race, but no drops yet. But Sandro's going to hope for something to give him a pit stop at a reduced rate here, whether that's a safety car or a change in weather.
Meanwhile, Ivan Burrito is battling it out with Noel and the other Sauber, the other Alfa Romeo, for the 9th position. Ivan Brito just took that back. See Sandro Dooley is trying to hold off the Aston Martin of Oleski and the Red Bull of David Rod.
To Jensen Randall's great benefit, as Jensen is now 1.2 ahead of Sandro, who's kind of a rolling blockade for him.
And Max Mulder picks up a 3-second time penalty. Well, I think Sandro's smart enough to know he knows, and I think everybody knows at this point, they don't have the outright pace to try and beat Jensen Randall. But I think Sandro's, I'm watching on board here with this battle, I think Sandro's smart enough to know that he can at least get a podium to try and get a proper send-off at the end of this season. But here goes David Rod trying to make a move.
Just a little peek.
Back in line.
Yeah. Just to make him wonder. Well, as the race is now with the current standings, Alexei Koivuniemi would finish P3 in the driver's standings. Sandro Dulis, 13 points behind him.
This has been a heck of a race so far. And Jensen Randall's pulled out to a 2-second gap because we've got this 3-car battle going on for the 2nd position, which I find super interesting because Sandro, he's, like we said, we don't know if he knows something about the weather or was just taking a gamble, but starting on those softs, he's been massively competitive in those tires, and he's making them last. And he's holding off 2 hard-charging cars here as the Red Bull of David Rod gets to the inside of Oleski to pick up the 3rd spot. And now David Rod's going to set his sights on Sandro as they head down this straightaway. This should be easy pickings for David Rod. Oh, but Sandro is not making it easy. He's going to get pushed wide a little bit, but hangs on to the position.
Now Koivuniemi might be able to benefit from the battle between these two.
And now we get into Sector 2 here. This is all mechanical grip. Aero is pretty much non-existent through this little section here. Nose to tail, Sandro Dulis in the Ferrari, David Rod in the Red Bull, and Oleski in the Aston Martin. 3-car battle for the 2nd position.
You just know Rod and Koivuniemi want to get by Sandro so badly. It's 3 seconds now to Jensen Randall, and they just cannot find a way around him. I know Dulis loves to go low wing as much as possible, so that might be why it's hard to get the overtake done on the start-finish straight, but David Rod able to do it at least.
Well, it took him about 3 laps to try and make it happen. But here comes Sandro. He's not completely out of it. Ooh.
So Koivuniemi, the only one in this 3-car battle, the only one not flashing on the battery, and Alexei's always struck me as someone who likes to manage a race, will wait for his moment. Sometimes it feels like maybe he waits a little bit too long and just runs out of time to get the work done.
Well, if he knows what we know, if he knows Sandro's on the soft tires, then he's probably going to bide his time a little bit. You can see how much time he gains through the Sector 2. So the tires are starting to give up on Sandro's car, but as you said, it's counterintuitive. He's got that low wing setup. He gains all of that time back on the front and back straightaway. So interesting strategies between these 3 cars. David Rod, I think, really just working with outright pace versus anything else. And Oleski, like you said, biding his time. He knows Sandra's going to have to pit in the next couple of laps. There's no way Sandra can keep these softs going and going the way that he has.
And just as these three battling helped Jensen earlier, these three battling now helping Nicolò Falzaresi in P5. Nico had been 5 seconds behind Jesper Limpinen just about 4 laps ago. Now he finds himself only 3 seconds behind Aleksi Koivuniemi.
Into Sector 2, David Rod still holding that second position. Jensen Randall out in front to the tune of 3.7 seconds right now. Nothing new there. But as you said, it looks like Falzaresi, that gap is down to 3.2 now to this battle. So he is starting to... You can start to see him in the background creeping into the shot. He's actually bringing 3 cars with him. Jesper Limpinen, Nick Van Gelder. Nick's got that 3-second time penalty hanging over his head, though.
It'll be another lap for Sandro here. It's almost looking like he's going to really stretch the soft tire so he can finish strong on whatever he would go to next. I assume he's trying to get a soft medium strategy.
Yeah, it looks like Jesper Limpinen is just diving into the pits. Ivan Brito got around Noel for the 8th position. Yeah, the tire strategy here, I'm impressed and confused by with Sandro. And it was only him and Dion Stahl, and Dion Stahl has also started on the softs. He's just now pitting on lap 16. So Dion running the same tire strategy, obviously not with the same amount of success. He doesn't have the same outright pace as Sandro, but interesting to see that both Ferraris start on the softs. Dion is now pitting, so you would think in the next lap or two, Sandro would be coming in, and it looks like Aleski's going to work his way around the outside, try and get that position before they get to the front straightaway.
Yeah, Koivuniemi definitely can get the overtake done on the outside. The tires are going to be in much better shape than Sandro's here.
And I think Sandro might be heading in this time. He is going to pit. So 17 laps. 16 laps on those softs for Sandro Dulis. That is a really, really good run.
Falzaresi now only 2.6 to Koivuniemi with Sandro having pitted. So the tenths keep shaving away between Koivuniemi and Falzaresi. Nico, very good opportunity here for a podium despite what looked like a pretty big incident earlier.
So Sandro has switched over to mediums. So good call on your part. See if he can make those last 20 laps. If he made softs last 16, then 20 laps on medium should be no problem for Sandro. So things have settled a little bit as we start this pit sequence. Jensen Randall out in front to the tune of 5.2 seconds over David Rod, but David Rod is under pressure from Aleski. Nicolò Falzaresi has worked his way back up into 4th after being pushed off track on the opening lap, falling down to 12th. Bord Bune is up to 5th. Noel is 6th. Sandro Dulis just came out of the pits. He's on a fresh set of mediums. In 7th position, Jesper Limpinen is 8th. Nick Van Gelder is 9th. And Freya Bile on the hards now is 10th.
Koivuniemi and David Rod very close to each other.
Now the top 6 cars have yet to pit, so things could still change quite a bit going through this pit sequence. We'll pick up David Rod. That is the closest battle on track right this second. David Rod trying to zero in on Aleski for that second position.
You mentioned earlier, David Rod is just all about race pace. He is really just kind of flooring it, sending it, and as a result, I have a feeling his tires are going to be in worse shape than Koivuniemi's. Koivuniemi was really patient up until Sandro finally pitted, so Koivuniemi's making his overtakes done through strategy here more than outright pace.
Which is interesting. Aleski, that is a... The thing there is he's a... I like Aleski because he's very methodical in the way he gains his points, but he's also got a lot of good pace when he needs it. And you don't find that with a lot of drivers. Usually it's one or the other. Like Falzaresi is really good at being fast. And Leski is really good at being fast and methodical. Right now, David Rod is finding it hard to get around him. He's going to have the DRS slot open. And he's finally going to get to the inside of Oleski. Oleski's going to try the crossover. Not close enough to make it stick. And a 3-second time penalty for Jesper Lempinen as we ride on board with Oleski up to the top of the hill and into Sector 2.
You can hear the over revs there for Koivuniemi around that slow left-hander.
Woo, dragging some wheels as he tries to get the power down. Oh, and a big moment there for David Rod. Big twitch coming out of that corner, and as you said, his tires are probably in a little bit worse shape as Max Mulder just ran the fastest lap of this race, and we've got a caution flag flying in Sector 2. Looks like that might be for Ivan Brito and Dion Stahl, possibly. Meanwhile, Oleski to the outside of David Rod and not able to make the pass there. He's going to bide his time, head through the center S's, and now he's going to have the DRS.
You mentioned
and
before
David Rod all the way down to the inside trying to run that defensive line.
You mentioned before Falzaresi looming in the background of this battle, and he's only getting closer and closer. It's almost like a horror movie to just see that alpha in the background.
Yeah, Falzaresi now 1.7 seconds back from this battle as we stay on board with Oleski. Meanwhile, Jensen Randall has pulled out an 8.5-second gap over this battle for second place. Meanwhile, David Rod trying to hold off Oleski, and the gap now to Falzaresi, 1.2. Falzaresi coming into scope. So Oleski trying to get the power down. He's going to have the DRS slot open as they come down the straightaway. And so's Falzaresi. Falzaresi's under a second. He's going to have the DRS available. And it's going to be a 3-car battle now as Oleski finally gets around David Rod for that second position. But here comes Falzaresi. He is now here. Falzaresi has made his presence known. It is a 3-car battle for the second position.
Yeah, he's got the hard compound dialed in, so, I mean, at this point, I don't know that any tire is loving life, but Nico's tires will at least have a little bit more left than David Rod's and Alexei Koivuniemi's.
Oh, and Oleski. And Nick Van Gelder is getting around Jesper Lempinen for the 7th position. Let's see how aggressive Nicolo Falzaresi is. A little bit of a wiggle coming out of that left-hander.
Well, he should have the overtake on David Rod here with DRS. I think Koivuniemi too far ahead of Nico. But Nico
he's
actually
going to dive into the pits.
Yes, along with Alexei Koivuniemi. So is the undercut on? David Rod the only one staying out? I wonder if that took him by surprise. I'm sure he would have pitted with them if he realized that they were going to be doing the same.
And it looks like Bor Bune's dived into the pits as well. So Sandro, who pitted a couple of laps ago, now jumps up into 3rd position.
And I'll be following David Rod on this lap, about 110 to get around. I'm curious to see where he's going to come out compared to the two he's been battling with. This is going to be a very difficult end lap for David Rod on these medium tires, even with all this clear space in front of him.
Meanwhile, we've got Jesper Lempinen and Nick Van Gelder battling it side by side for the 4th position right now. Both have a 3-second time penalty hanging over their head, but through the pit sequence, they've managed to work their way up through the field here a little bit. And Sandro Julius is in the 3rd position. He'll easily be able to take that 2nd spot away from David Rod when David Rod decides to pit. We'll see if he's going to do it this time by.
He is coming in. So provisional P2 stuck behind Nick Van Gelder right now is Alexei Koivuniemi. He's also got Jesper Lempinen visible. So this may be to
And
David
here
Rod's
comes
benefit.
Oleski. And Oleski's on the softs, so he's doing the opposite of the Sandro strategy.
Lexi wants to get by these two so much, and now
Oh, and he's in the grass. Can he hang on to it? Yes, he can. Woo! I
very
thought when he
long,
dropped that wheel in the grass, I thought it was going to be all done.
very long pit exit for David Rod, so he will very much come out behind Nicolo Falzaresi and Koivuniemi. So the undercut working for Koivuniemi. We talk about his overtakes being done via strategy. There's another one.
Meanwhile, he is trying to find a way around these two cars in front of him. Jesper Lempinen holding off Nick Van Gelder. These guys
Nico.
battle. Oh, and here,
Yeah,
Nicolo
Nico
Falzaresi
really
just
sent
showed
it.
up out of nowhere.
Nico really sent it coming into turn 8 there. And he's going to do it
Send it
again.
in again. Oh, Falzaresi showing some of that aggressiveness.
Yeah, he is not content to wait until this DRS straight to try and make some space here on Nick Van Gelder and Jesper Lempinen, who P3 and P4. P3 for Jesper Lempinen. Oh, boy.
Oleski,
Oh,
my gosh.
jeez. Alexi with one of the bravest overtakes I've seen.
Falzaresi tries to do the same. He's going to get one, but not the other. Woo!
Oh, my gosh. I don't know how Koivuniemi did that, but good on him to save a lot of time in his future by getting the overtakes done when he did.
Man, Oleski has been dodging cars since qualifying, trying to find his way around some of these things. It's his on track passes have been not one car, but it always seems to be a group of 2 or 3 that he's fighting with. Meanwhile, Jensen Randall is still out in front to the tune of almost 21 seconds as we see Nick Van Gelder lose the back end of his car, and he's going to give up that spot to Jesper Lempinen.
Yeah, I almost wonder if Nico, maybe a little contact, maybe Nick Van Gelder didn't realize Nico was there, because Nico's been very aggressive in Sector 2, and he got the overtake done on Nick Van Gelder, but he finds himself now kind of free in P4 here. He doesn't have to worry about battling for a little bit.
Meanwhile, while all of this is going on, David Rod is sneaking back into the picture. He's 2.5 seconds back of that battle on fresher tires. And it looks like we got Friad Biles diving into the pits. This will be his second pit because he had to pit on that opening lap shunt. So he's still running around in the 12th position as he heads into the pits.
Yeah, that pit stop going an extra lap over Koivuniemi and Falzaresi really starting to kind of backfire on David Rod as he finds himself in that same traffic they found themselves in behind Jesper Lempinen and Nick Van Gelder.
Which they're very much running their own race as they battle each other for position, and it's legit position battling because they both have the same 3-second time penalty, so it's not as if one's going to lose out because of the time penalty over the other. Meanwhile, Jensen Randall has dived into the pits finally. Lap 26 of 36. I'm sure he's probably, putting on softs?
Yeah, he's already in the pit exit.
And somebody else just picked up a 3-second time penalty, but I didn't see who it was. Oh, and Nick Van Gelder swings back across the front end of Jesper Lempinen for that 5th position.
Well, hey, how about Sandro Giulis, who pitted before anyone else, really, that we had been following in the top 5. He's only a second behind Jensen Randall. Now, Jensen, of course, once he gets tires up to temp, is going to be flying around this track. But at least for now, Giulis making it interesting for him, staying in the rearview mirror.
This is for sure one of the better races I've seen Sandro run in a long time. As we see George Wilkes picks up a 3-second timing penalty. Meanwhile, the battle for 5th rages on between Nick Van Gelder and Jesper Lempinen as we see Senna Haywire picks up a 30-second time penalty. And David Rod is a part of this battle, but unfortunately, I think, like you said earlier, the tire strategy has backfired on him. He's stuck in this traffic. He's not able to gain much ground. And realistically, once Jesper... Oh, we've got a caution flag flying in Sector 2. Looks like that might have been Ivan Brito had a quick on-off. But yeah, David Rod is suffering now from this. Even if once these guys pit, he's only going to be up into the 5th position and well behind Nicolo Falzaresi and Oleski for any type of podium, as we see Jesper Lempinen go around Nick Van Gelder again.
Oh, I think David Rod had to
David
really
Rod.
slow up. Yeah, I think this is one of the best illustrations we've seen all season of how big a difference just even pitting one lap later and on a short lap around Interlagos, only about 70 seconds long, but you see it's a huge difference between Falzaresi and Koivuniemi and David Rod, even though it was only about a minute 10, a minute 15 difference in their pit times.
And Max Mulder just picked up a 5-second time penalty for speeding into the pit lane as we see David Rod finally get around his quote-unquote teammate for the 6th position, and he should be able to make easy work of Jesper Lempinen as we see Jensen Randall sets the fastest lap at a 109. I believe he's the first driver to crack into the 109s. And David Rod around the outside of Jesper Lempinen for the 5th position, but he is now 3.7 seconds back of Nicolo Falzaresi. Meanwhile, we do have a battle going on here for the 8th position as Noel in the other Alfa Romeo has caught the back end of Borbune in the Haas. And Noel going to try and get to the inside of Borbune. He thought about it, and we've got a caution flag flying in Sector 1. That's a safety car. Is that Dion Stahl?
That's the Ferrari of Dion Stahl. The front wing is completely off. He lost it in the Senna S exit, I believe. So now, if you're Sano Dulis, there's the safety car. Do you go in for softs, or if you're Koivuniemi, Falzaresi, what do you do? It's kind of an awkward time. The softs are going to be in not great shape at the end of this race.
Well, Sandra's on the mediums. Oh gosh, I don't know. This is why I don't race.
Yeah, this is. I mean, Jensen came in.
Jensen's going to pit, but that's expected. Jensen's got the outright pace to do whatever he wants. That's just whatever. Jensen's going to win the race. The battle. Sandra is coming into the pits.
Everyone's coming in.
Does David Rod stay out? No, David Rod does not stay out. And Jesper and Nick have to pit because they've yet to pit. Borbune's coming in. Noel's coming in.
Yeah, pretty much everybody. The only one I could see maybe staying out is Freya Belai just to get track position.
5-second timing penalty for Noel. That's going to suck. Freab. Is anybody on? I mean, Freab's only got 3 laps on his. He's coming in anyways. It doesn't matter. So I guess everybody's going to take this as a free pit stop. It's not really going to change the order a whole lot. And I imagine everybody's probably switching over to soft tires.
Well, we have ourselves essentially a sprint race here at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I figure by the time everybody gets queued up, and we go back to green, it's going to be roughly 31 of 36, 32 of 36. So everybody on the soft tires, we're going to have ourselves a 5 or 6 lap shootout when this is all said and done, once the track is cleared. Kind of surprised they threw the safety car for that incident. Dion Stahl, I mean, he's not out of the race.
Yeah, unless there's debris on the track, I don't know if that could have been enough. His front wing was gone, but there's so much runoff around the Senna S that you would think, there's not a huge need for a safety car, especially given the incidents we've seen already in this race where there wasn't even a VSC. Freya Belai and who was it? The Haas of Borbune, I think, kind of got sideways for a little bit. George Wilkes had kind of a big incident and nothing but a drivable incident for Dion Stahl, and here we go, full safety car.
You know, it's Codemasters.
And I think
so
that's...
Jensen Randall is your leader.
We've got Robin Herstadhagen appearing in P3 behind the safety car, but it's... I don't know that in this game. I don't know if it's intentional or still a glitch where the lapped cars cannot unlap themselves on a safety car. So Robin Herstadhagen just kind of a car in the way of Alexei Koivuniemi here to the benefit of Sandro Dulis.
Yeah, so the McLaren, Robin Herterstegen, I mean, he could theoretically get out of line, I guess, and let everybody pass him.
I think we saw
But
this early on in the season with Freya Balai, the other McLaren driver, where he was just not permitted to overtake the safety car. Um, Obviously, pretty upsetting when you've got as much pace as Freya Balai does. If you can get on the lead lap, you can do a lot of damage on a safety car restart. But unfortunately for both Robin Herstadhagen and Alexei Koivuniemi, it looks like he'll be staying in.
ooh, safety car's coming in this lap. So that got queued up pretty quick. You see Herterstegen trying to get to the inside. I think he's going to try and stay out of the way. I think he knows he would be a moving roadblock at this point. Sandro trying to get as close as he can to Jensen Randall. He's trying to do the Max Verstappen and be at the
Yeah.
the right rear tire, the left rear tire of the car in front, but
Oh,
it'd be bold of Sandro.
what a restart for Jensen Randall.
Yeah, it was never going to work. It was never going to work. Meanwhile, Leski is trying to find a way around the McLaren of Robin Herterstegen. And Robin, I mean, I'm sure he wants to be out of the way, but where do you pick and choose to do that?
It's tough
Oh,
on the
he's
Senna
making
S.
contact with Falzarezzi.
Yeah.
Oh, and now he cuts across the nose. Oh, no.
I mean, as you say, what can you do coming into the S there? It's hard. But now he's and he's sideways.
Contact, and he makes contact with Falzarezzi. Oh, no.
That is
massive crash. That's Ivan Brito.
Oh my
Falzarezzi.
gosh.
George Wilkes, Noel. Oh, my goodness. And a 5-second time penalty. Well, that doesn't matter. He's out. And another safety car. Oh, my gosh.
Well, the wing is off for Freya Balai. And the McLaren of Robin Hertschhagen also damage. Looks like even Brito got through relatively unscathed. Nicola Falzarezzi.
It was the Mercedes of George Wilkes. I saw that got completely demolished. And it looks like the Alpine is that Max Mulder. Looks like he's got a flat left front. Oh yeah, that tire is completely torn up. So Max Mulder will have to make another pit. Pretty sure Senna, you can probably drive around him. Oh nope, Senna's got a flat left rear. I apologize, Senna. So the two Alpines are going to have to double stack. Flat left front on Max Mulder, flat left rear on Senna Haywire. And Robin Herterstegen will be making the pit, and that is just that is a tough. Robin Herterstegen's just going to call it a day after that. That is a tough break. I feel kind of bad for Robin. I know Robin Herterstegen usually does not cause any type of on-track incidents, but when you're a lap down and you're not allowed to pass the safety car, like this track is kind of narrow, it's short. Small lap times. What do you do? What do you do?
Yeah, especially coming around turn 4, you really want to take it inside as hard as you can and then kind of drift to the outside to prep yourself for that uphill right-hander. So there's no good position to be in there, especially as a car not on a lead lap. You can't really give way, which we saw Robin trying to do, but yeah, it's tough. I mean, obviously, big contact with George Wilkes. Nicola Falzarezzi involved in that too. So a couple setbacks here for Nico. And I don't know that this one is as recoverable as it was earlier on in the race.
Yeah, Falzarezzi now down into the 9th position. So we'll probably circulate at least one more lap under the safety car. Jensen Randall still your leader. Caught Sandro. Sandro was trying very hard, but caught him napping at the last second, and Sandro fell back immediately. Still managed to hang on to second spots, but I think if Jensen gets him napping again like that, Oleski's going to be able to take that position. David Rod now up into 4th. This is his best position to be in to try and grab a podium. Jesper Lempinen in 5th, Boer Bune 6th, Nick Van Gelder 7th. Dion Stahl's in 8th, and Falzarezzi 9th, and Ivan Brito up to 10th position.
Well, given the penalties directly in front of him, Dion Stahl, if he stays close, he could find himself catapulted into P5 here. Of course, he's got Nicola Falzarezzi behind him. But Jesper Lempinen, Boer Bune, Nick Van Gelder, all with timing penalties that'll be applied as we cross start finish at the end of the race. So Dion Stahl could get some pretty good points here.
So the safety car should be coming in this lap, I imagine. Basically going to have a 3-lap shootout. Of course, we thought we were going to have a 5-lap shootout, but that ended very quickly.
Jensen Randall is so good on safety car restarts. It's not just when he's the one restarting the field, but we've seen him in P2, P3. He's just always right on top of it. I don't think there's any driver in the field throughout the last few rounds who's made up so much time so quickly on a safety car restart.
Yeah, I think Sandro really, what he needs to do, Sandro needs to just protect second place. Like you I hate to say it, but you're not going to beat Jensen. You're not. Nobody is. You've got to protect second spot from Oleski and David Rod, because David Rod's going to be coming with a head of steam. You know, he's been raw pace this whole race, and now in 4th position this close. And they are back to green flag racing, control car. Jensen Randall off and running. Good restart by the top 3. Sandro staying relatively close. Oleski's right behind him. David Rod caught napping a little bit, but he gains it up under the braking zone. Oh, and that's Borbune. Looks like he's off. Might have gotten a little shove from Nick Van Gelder. And here comes Oleski. He's in the slipstream of Sandro. Woo, Sandro just putting those right side tires on the grass.
Already a second for Jensen Randall here.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, you're not going to beat Jensen. I think Sandro just needs to try and figure out a way to hang on to 2nd or 3rd and grab that final podium of the season. Senna Haywire with another 3-second timing penalty. Nicolo Falzaresi getting around Dion Stahl for the 7th position. They're battling side by side. Riding on board with Oleski right now as they head out of Sector 2. Nick Van Gelder up into 5th. And David Rod, we got a car off in the grass. I don't know who that was. But there's a big stack up, 4th all the way back to 10th. Meanwhile, Jensen Randall is off to the races. He's 2.8 seconds up. Oleski's trying to find a way around Dion Stahl, or around Sandro Julius.
Okay. So Alexi gets it done through the S's. And we'll see. I mean, that was, I think, Sandro sending it around, though.
Sandro is so good coming out of the Senna S's. 2 laps to go. The battle for second is on. George Wilkes is officially leaving the session. A 3-second timing penalty for David Rod. So now the battle for 4th is kind of wide open with all of the timing penalties back there.
Yeah, Freya Bly might find himself just jumping up at the end.
And a 5-second time penalty for Ivan Brito for cutting a corner and gaining a position. So I don't know what's going on in the back as we watch this battle for second place. Just imagine, I respect Jensen, but if Jensen wasn't here, this would be the battle for the lead of this race. He's almost not here since he's 3.5 seconds up the road.
He's no longer on screen.
Gone.
As he starts the final lap. We'll check in with him as he crosses start-finish, but until then, with DRS enabled, these two should be fun. 2 DRS zones. Who will position themselves to be the beneficiary? It's going to be Koivuniemi, who's going to get DRS coming into this first straight.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot Sandro's going to be able to do about this. Oh, Sandro is good at fading the car. He's not necessarily blocking, but he's kind of blocking. But it's a fade that he does very well to get back into the racing line. It's not necessarily an aggressive move. And on a narrow track like this, it works perfectly as he hangs onto that second position. Oleski trying to find a way around him through Sector 2. Looks like Max Mulder, 10-second timing penalty for corner cutting. I don't know what's going on in the back. These guys the gloves are off. It's the final race of the season. It's the final lap of the final race. Sandro trying to hang on to everything he's got. Jensen Randall.
Cut to him briefly.
Come across the line, wins the race again. Final race of the season. Meanwhile, here comes Sandro. And he's going to be able to hold off Oleski at the last moment for the second position. Nick Van Gelder coming across the line. Timing penalties are going to be assessed. David Rod, Borbune, and Ivan Brito with a 5-second time penalty, unserved.
Well, Frabolai did jump a few positions based on timing penalties, but only to P6. So an unfortunate race there for Frabolai. Caught up again with the Haas drivers, but driver of the day, Jensen Randall. So says the game, and it's hard to argue when he goes last to first yet again.
I don't know. Oleski and Sandro had a really good race, but Jensen, yeah, I'm going to have to give it to Jensen today. I usually don't give it to Jensen simply because he's so good. And ironically, we don't see a lot of Jensen
Yeah.
on screen because he's usually so far ahead of everybody else. A lot of focus today was on Sandro and Oleski in the second, third, fourth, and fifth positions, but Jensen Randall last to first, challenge complete once again. 3-time SRL F1 champion.
Yeah, constructors
So unofficial
champion.
results for today's race. Jensen Randall, top spot. Sandro Dulis, second. Oleski is third. Nick Van Gelder holds on to fourth position, followed by Jesper Lempinen. Free Abile works his way up into sixth, while David Rod falls to seventh. Boer Bune is eighth. Dion Stahl is ninth. And Nicolo Falzarezzi, up and down day for him for sure, rounds out the top 10 points paying position. Senna Haywire was 11th. Ivan Brito, 12th. Max Mulder was 13th. And then 14th, 15th, and 16th, all DNFs. That is Noel, George Wilkes, and Robin Herderstagen. And speaking of Nicolo Falzarezzi, we actually have him in the booth with us. To the booth, Nicolo, what is going on?
Hello, mate. First of all, it's been really, really good to have this last race in SRL F1 because it's going to be the last one in a while. And simply the lap car was in the middle of the way, and I actually tried to overtake him round the outside, but it didn't work out because he was on the curb, and I tried to take it wide, but it wasn't wide enough. So that's what happened, basically.
Yeah,
So
it
would
was
you
a
say
tough
this is
race.
your
You had a great recovery after I think it was around the Senna S on lap one going off, but a really good recovery, and then yeah, just comes some safety car craziness at the end. But still a really good race. Always fun to watch you on track, Nico. We'll miss you, I'm sure, and all the best to you in your near future here.
Oh, me too. Thank you, mate. Really, I was feeling bad even this morning, and I didn't even start racing, because I'm going to miss sim racing so much. But it's not the last one. It's not the actual last one because we're going to have the Indy 500 on the 1st of June, and yeah, it was a tough race, but still. I'm going to remember this positively because I had some fun charging through the pack. So yeah, this was good.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it. We'll see you at the Indy 500. That'll be in 2 weeks here on the SRL F1 YouTube channel. That's going to be in Project Cars 2. So look forward to that. And I'm sure other events throughout the summer as we gear up for the next season in September. That'll be season 10 of the F1 League in SRL.
Well, there you have it, folks. Late breaking news. Falzarezzi will be taking a sabbatical. We won't see him after the Indy 500 for quite some time, and that's a bit of a loss to the league for sure. Falzarezzi is always a very fast and aggressive driver, a lot of fun to watch. So kind of disappointed to hear that news, but unfortunately people have lives that they need to attend to. So, Nicolo, always good to have you with us.
Yeah, thank
Wish
you, thank you
the
for
best
me
in your
too.
future endeavors and hope to see you back on track someday. And yeah, as the cat chiropractor said, keep up with us on what is it, SRL F1 on Instagram.
That's the one. You can vote driver of the day if you, like we so often have, some Nico fans in the YouTube chat. If you want to vote for Nico despite the bad luck at the end, you can do that on the Instagram for SRL F1.
Yeah, in 2 weeks, June 1st, the Indy 500 on Project Cars 2, so stay tuned for that, and obviously stay tuned through the Instagram for more news and notes heading into the summer and into Season 10, which will kick off in September. I'm sure Sandro will have some other things going on throughout the course of the summer. So, Season 9 for SRL, that is a wrap. I'm Kamikaze Fox. This has been the Cat Chiropractor and Nicolo Falzarezzi announcing his sabbatical. And we'll see you all at the Indy 500.